Welcome to Date Like a French Woman, the podcast where we approach dating as a sacred healing journey rather than a quest.
Hi, did you ever wonder how astrology could help you with finding love, or even knowing maybe if you're compatible or if it is the right time for you to look? Well, today I have a guest who's gonna be able to help you with that because she's an expert. This is an episode of Date Like a French Woman, the podcast that helps you approach dating as a healing journey rather than a quest. And as you know, we've now been recording those episodes live on Facebook. So you can come, comment, ask questions. And if you love what you're hearing, share it with who you think could benefit from this information. If this is the first time that you join, my name is Murielle. I am a sacred dating coach and a transformation and self-love coach. And now I'm going to bring our guest. Her name is Natha Perkins. French, Franglish. She's an astrologer and a certified master life coach. She uses a unique blend of modalities in her approach with an emphasis on traditional coaching and astrology. She often uses supplements with knowledge from the Enneagram, which I'm not familiar with, and insight from the tarot cards. So welcome, Natha. How are you this morning?
Hi, Murielle. It's really nice to be here.
I'm excited because this is something that I know a lot of people have questions about, and personally, I'm not familiar with, like I told you when we talked earlier. So before we start, I would love if you could tell the audience how you ended up doing astrology. What's your story about it? Why did you end up doing that? And more importantly, even professionally?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I really became interested in astrology. I've been on a lifelong journey, really since I was about 18, of trying to understand myself better. And so, I've gone through many different versions of my life. And I actually got my first astrology reading when I was really having a hard time. My marriage was coming to an end. I had 2 young children, and I really had no idea what I was doing and really even who I was. And I talked to a friend who had just been to see an astrologer, and I went and got a reading with this astrologer, and my mind was really blown. The reading helped me she helped explain to me what was happening and sort of the bigger picture version of what was happening in my life and the transitions that I was meant to be going through, and really the transformations that I was meant to be going through. And really from then on, I just had this love affair with astrology. A few years ago, decided to really, really start learning it. And I became an apprentice to an astrologer and just really dove in. And I decided that I wanted to start using astrology in my own practice. I had been doing life coaching for a few years, but astrology is just this really interesting map that can be used to explain human archetypes, really. And we have all of these archetypes, all of us have them. And I just find that it is such a perfect way to work with people, because astrology acts almost like an elder that we can go to ask questions of and really get insight that we might not be able to necessarily pull from our own minds. And so I just use it as a launching point with clients. And my goal always is to help other people understand themselves, as much as possible. We all have so many blind spots, and I'm sure you do this in your own work, is, the more that we can help people identify their blind spots, the better off all of us are.
Because God knows we have quite a few. So if somebody is totally new to astrology, what's the starting point? Let's say before they even come see you, what can they do?
So as I'm sure you have seen, and all of us have seen, there is a lot of what we call sun sign astrology out there, where we identify as our sun sign. We all know what month we were born in, and therefore we all say, oh, I'm a Pisces or I'm a Virgo. Of course, that's a very small piece of the whole astrological picture, but it's a good place to start. It doesn't tell you everything, but if you are the least bit interested in astrology, start researching what your sun sign is. And then I would suggest you can go to a website called astro.com and get a free natal chart. You need to have your birth data. So you need to know exactly what time you were born, as well as your date and location. And you can pull up a natal chart. Now, astrology is a fairly complicated thing to just dive in and automatically understand, but you can certainly pull out different pieces of your chart and do internet research. I always encourage internet research, but it is internet research. So you can get pieces of the puzzle, but it might be difficult to actually put the pieces together. And that's where a professional astrologer is really helpful, because they can give you a full natal chart reading and just kind of blow your mind. But before you even get there, in your question, print yourself up a natal chart and start looking into it yourself.
Okay. And so, because I know that personally, when I went on one of those sites and I downloaded my chart, it was like Spanish to me. Yeah. I don't speak Spanish, to tell you. And what I saw is that I had my sun sign, but there were many other elements into that chart. And I understood that like you said, they probably relate to some archetype in me, but I could not figure out how. Is there a way to figure this out by yourself, or do you have to go and see someone like you?
You can. So if you were going to print out a natal chart, you could dissect it. For instance, you can pull out your sun sign and research what it means to have a Pisces sun. You can also pull out the different parts, like your moon sign, and research what does it mean to have a Taurus moon. And so you can begin to learn it yourself, but it is a really intricate map. And there are so many layers to what every single thing means. And so I always suggest getting at least one natal chart reading, because the astrologer can really help you tell the tale of who you are, what you came here to be, and again, some of your blind spots, your gifts, your challenges. But for the lay person, go in and look at your sun, your moon, and your ascendant. Those three are places, and your natal chart will tell you where those are. You'll just have to look at it, and that alone can give you at least enough information to start on. And then if you're really curious, definitely get a chart reading.
So a natal chart will be like a picture in time of where the planets were when you were born.
Yes.
Now, everybody evolves, especially if we work on ourselves. So does it mean that the astrology reading that you're going to see when the person is, for example, at 40, is going to be completely different than the one you saw when they were born? Or I guess there are some elements that stay because they are like part of who we are. How does that work? Does it change through life?
So we're born with a natal chart, which is a map of where all of the planets were in the sky at the time of your birth. That one doesn't change. However, within astrology, within every archetype, there is an entire spectrum of behaviors that go along with that. So if we're talking about the moon, for example, and the moon in our chart is representative of the way that we experience emotions and the way that we act emotions out and the way that we really relate to the world emotionally. And, with every moon sign, there are unconscious ways of relating to the world, all the way to extremely conscious, aware ways. And I think that that's what that's sort of the transition that I see in people, is that we oftentimes relate to the world in smaller ways, in more unconscious ways when we're younger. And of course, as we go through life experience, as we have, hardship and things that happen in our lives, we mature and we begin to relate in much more awakened, much more transformed ways of seeing the world. And so the planets stay the same, but the way that we work them really changes and enriches, hopefully, as we get older. Now, there are transits that happen, and I'm sure all of you listening have heard of Mercury retrograde and Venus retrograde and Saturn retrograde. And we all have these transits that the planets are continuously moving in the sky. And as they're moving, they do touch occasionally or often on our personal planets in our chart. And then we have what we call a transit. A transit that many of us have probably heard of is the Saturn return. And that is a life cycle transit that we all get when we're around 29. That's a transit that is very maturing. We really have to learn to relate to the world in new ways. We have to learn what authority means to us. And I think anybody listening, if you go back and you really think about what was happening in your life around 29 or 30, you'll have an aha moment and think, oh my God, I was just getting married, or I was, that was when I got pregnant, or that was when I had to do this big career change, or I quit my job and I went to school. We all have something. Can you think of in your own life?
Yeah. So actually, I met my ex-husband around 28, 29, and I got married at 30. Yeah. So that was a big transition moment. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you look back, you would probably see in hindsight that meeting him, marrying him, really was a pivotal life change for you in terms of maturing and becoming somebody that it was very character building in many ways, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because we moved to another country. It's
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So
yes.
I don't know if that was your question, but we're constantly we constantly have opportunities to grow and evolve within astrology, as within any modality. And I think astrology is really beautiful as a self-growth tool, a self-awareness tool.
Yes. So does it mean, for example, if it's we have transit periods in our life, does it mean that we should refrain at certain times to look for love, for example, or start something new? Are there any restriction when you see that it's a transit period on somebody's chart?
I think that it depends on the transit and it depends on the person, and it, so a Neptune transit, for example, can make us feel very confused and very unsure of what we're supposed to do next and where we're supposed to be. And in a way, that's really valuable, because sometimes we need a forced slowing down period to really get clear. And, we could say, maybe it's not a good time during this transit to make a big change. And yet, on the other hand, maybe a big change is exactly what you need. So it really is very personal for what's going on. And I think that, this whole idea of really knowing ourselves and learning to trust in our intuition is really what can inform us about what we should or shouldn't be doing. And of course, astrology can give us sort of a bird's eye view into, what is my intuition really telling me here? And what should I be doing? What does my higher self want me to do?
Yes, because sometimes what I noticed with my clients and myself is that when you have very strong emotions and really strong blocks, some very subconscious beliefs or patterns, your intuition will be hijacked, let's say, by fear. So isn't astrology a more neutral tool to look at what's going on when you are like caught in an emotional pattern, for example?
Yes, absolutely. You know, for example, I have had a number of clients recently who have been, like you said, their intuition has been hijacked by fear. And when I look at their chart, they're having Saturn transits. Saturn transits can often bring up fear. But what's interesting is that when we look at the nature of the transit, you know, we can make some assumptions, we can make some hypotheses and say, you know, it's very scary right now because you are looking to you're looking to really be in the world in a different way. You're looking to approach relationship in a new and mature way, and that can be scary. We have to give up some of our habitual ways of being in order to really, you know, burst forth into a stronger, more powerful version. And it's scary. And
Yeah.
it's scary, but it's also, there's so much potential. And so we can really use the astrology to explain the fear. And once we know the fear, it's not as easy. We don't get hooked as much, right?
Yes. So for the audience, if you have questions, don't hesitate to post them here in the comments, because I'll go back and read as we talk. And I know that one of the viewers is too young to have had a Saturn return, but maybe other questions. And since we're talking about love, I would like to ask about love. Is there a way to see with astrology if somebody is compatible, or if somebody is toxic for you, or if it's not the right time for the both of you? Is it possible to see that?
Yeah, definitely. You know, when we're talking about love in astrology, we can look at a number of places within the chart. We can look at the planet Venus. Venus tells us about really what we are attracted to naturally, what our gifts are, what we bring to relationship, and also what some of our challenges are. And so we can look at our own chart to really understand some of what we need. Really, Venus and Juno. Juno is an asteroid. Venus is about love, dating, romance, but it's also about value, the way that we value ourselves, which has so much to do with the way that we go out in the world and date, as you know.
Oh, yes, with everything, actually, with
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. And then Juno is about long-term partnership and marriage, we could say. And so we can look at those two planet/asteroid in the chart, in the specific chart, and get good information. And, you know, we can also really tell a story based on everything that's in the chart of, you know, what kind of modeling did you have as a child when it comes to relationships? Because that will inform. What, you know, in what ways did we really feel wounded? Because that will also inform. And once we know those things, it will empower. So even just knowing that can tell you so much, you know, about, you know, for example, I had your chart here, Murielle, and I think that we talked a little bit about this.
Let's look and let's give concrete examples.
Yeah, let's give some examples. So your Venus is in the sign of Aquarius, and Aquarius is an air sign. And so people that have Venus in air signs really need to find partners that are mentally stimulating.
Yeah.
You could say that you really need to be seduced through the mind first.
Yes.
And, you know, if you didn't know that about yourself, and you were sort of going on what society may have taught you, or what you know, what you saw in your mother, you might believe something to be different. You might think, well, you know, I need to make sure that this man is financially stable, and that's what I am looking for in a man, when the truth is that, yes, that's probably important, but you have to have somebody that makes you think and makes you want to dig into his brain as a baseline. I mean, would you say that's true?
Absolutely. And by the way, when you read my chart a little bit and you sent me what you saw, I was blown away. I never know. I was really surprised by the accuracy of what you sent, because every point that you touched was really, really accurate. And it's a great self-discovery tool.
It is. It's a self-discovery tool, because what I always see is that when you have somebody that is objective, and I'm sure that you have seen this working with clients, that you bring an objectivity to their experience that they might not have seen otherwise.
Yes.
And it's the same with astrology, is we can say the chart suggests that you need a partner of high mental intelligence. And you might think, oh my God, that's so true, but I had never really thought about it in those terms. Once you know, then you can approach when you're trying to find a partner, or you're trying to relate to a partner in a whole different way, because, if you are with a partner who is really solid and predictable and really earthy, very grounded, that might not be totally appealing to what you need. That might be appealing to what somebody else needs. And so it's always really interesting just to get an idea of what's in your chart. And then, of course, you can always bring in the chart of your lover, of your partner, of any potentials, and look at that, because their chart will also give you, there are, in astrology, we look for an equal amount of compatibility and also of difficulty, because in a passionate relationship, of course, we need to butt heads a little bit to keep it interesting.
Yeah, and relationships are really a gold mine to work on ourselves and see our triggers and see where we need to heal. So there will be those two opposites for a relationship to be sacred in my eyes. And that's funny, because the part of the intellect I discovered many years ago when I was with someone who otherwise had a lot of the stuff I really liked, but I was not stimulated and I was bored. And that's how I knew that I had to leave. So for our audience who is dating, and if you start a relationship where everything is going kind of okay, but yet there is this element of something missing, looking at your chart can give you an indication of what you're really after and help you decide if this is a relationship you want to continue with or not. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, and the other thing that we can look at through your astrology chart, or the astrology chart, the chart when we're putting two charts together, is that we can get an idea of these relationships. I think all of us have had very short, intense relationships that have left us reeling, but have been shorter than we wanted. And we can really, we can look in the chart and get an idea of whether that's one of those kinds of relationships too, right? It's like we can really see, what the point of the relationship is, because like you said, we learn so much about ourselves through relationship.
Yes.
And we obviously are brought, especially in today's day and age, many of us have many relationships in a lifetime. We aren't just with one person anymore as often. And all of those relationships have so much to teach us if we're willing to, if we're willing to look at it. Sometimes we leave a relationship and we're hurt, or we're angry, or we're frustrated or questioning. But with astrology, and I'm sure with your work as well, we can really find such rich information for, like, what was that? What was the point of that? What was I supposed to be learning, right?
That's what I was going to ask you. Can you see in retrospect what the lesson was about a relationship? And
yes. Especially if we look at the time period of the relationship, because we can look and say, oh, for example, you had this transit happening. And this transit, let's say it's a Pluto transit. This transit is all about transformation. And so this person really, really taught you a lot about what needed to be transformed within you in order to become more powerful, in order to become somebody that is capable of intimate experience in a whole new way. And when you present it like that, then the person being read for, the client, can say, oh, yes, God, that was so transformational. And we could, back to your marriage during your Saturn return, if I were to say, what kind of character building was that for you? What kind of responsibility did you learn about yourself through that relationship? I bet you'd have a lot of
Oh,
A lot of
yes. To start with, to stand on both my feet by myself, as stepping in my power. Because
yes.
I ended up divorcing, of course, and I ended up raising my kids practically by myself. So it forced me to step in my strength and my power and face my fears, because I had no other way. I'm going to look, because I asked people to submit through emails too, because some people are shy and they don't like to submit in front of everybody. So the question I see coming back is about toxic relationship. Can you see that in a chart?
So, yes. If I was going to look at a natal chart, I could say, some people have if you have come in, let me put it like this, if you have come into this life to really work relationship, then of course you will have aspects in the chart that can prove to be very difficult. Aspects to your Venus, for example, aspects to your Juno that can be difficult. And so you might find yourself pulling in toxic relationships. And really the reason for that is that your higher self is wanting you to learn something. What I see often is that we repeat the patterns that were modeled to us. And yes, those cause a lot of pain and suffering for us. If we are on a path of awakening and on a path of being introspective about our life and really trying to break patterns and break chains, then eventually we start to, if we're in a toxic relationship and we end it, and then we are curious about what was meant to have gone through, what is it? Eventually you can transform that so that you're not pulling in the toxic relationships anymore, but rather you are really pulling in rich relationships that feel good. And, I'm going to look at your chart really quickly and see if I can see some difficult aspects for you.
And meanwhile, for the audience, if you want to be notified the next time we go live, because I very often forget to say that, just write in the comment, notify me, and you will be automatically added to my love bot, which is my messenger bot on Facebook. And if you come on replay, you can still ask questions or put comments, because I'll go back and I'll answer them, and I'll tell Natha if you have a question for her.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to answer any specific questions that come in, because it is I think once you know the potential of astrology, you kind of get excited, like, oh, I want to know more, and what about this? So definitely.
Yeah.
I would say in your chart, Murielle, one of the things that I see that could be difficult for you is that your Juno is the planet, it's the asteroid of long-term partnership. And your Juno is in the sign of Pisces. And Pisces is a water sign. People that have relationship planets in the water signs, there is a high level of emotion that is needed. And so you have your Venus in an air sign, so you need the mental stimulation, but you also, especially as the relationships progress and they become longer, you really need somebody that can hold your emotions for you, that can meet you, somebody that is in touch with their own emotions. And I would say also Pisces is a planet of deep, deep spirituality. And so it would also be good for you to have a partner that you could have a shared life of the spirit with. And, that doesn't mean that your partner has to believe in the same things that you do, but, you're a Reiki practitioner. And so of course you would want, for example, a partner who understood that and supported that and was doing their own sort of self-awareness practice. And would you say that that's true?
Yes, and actually, when I guide my students and my clients, what you just said, somebody who's open to spirit, for example, to spirituality, but not necessarily in the same way that you are. And that's what I want for myself when I'm in a relationship, is to know that concretely that person believes that there is something bigger than us. He doesn't have to believe exactly in what I believe, and understand that we are all energy, although it would be cruel, but to be open to what I'm doing. Because somebody who's, for example, some people consider that working with energy is evil, is not a good fit for me. So yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah.
That is accurate.
Yeah. And so let me ask you this, because you also have Saturn, and it's not in the closest of conjunctions, but it's very close to your Juno. And Saturn sometimes can make us doubt ourselves. And of course, doubt is something that is a great learning tool.
Yes.
And so from your chart suggests that it might have taken you some years to get to a point where you are now, where you are able to really own your own sense of spirituality, and you're able to bring it into relationship and have an understanding with a partner that this is really important to you.
Yes.
Would you say that's true?
It's true. And I know that even as a coach, for years I would coach, and I wouldn't go too much into the spirituality, what they call the woo-woo side of it. And I came out of the woo-woo closet probably 2 years ago, because I decided that that's who I was, and I needed to filter who was supposed to follow me or who was supposed to be in my life. And that's true. It took me quite some time.
Yeah, because Saturn in our chart can really expose to us what our limiting beliefs are, and also the ways that we conform, because we don't want to be rejected. We don't want to be seen as, we don't want to ruin our reputation. Saturn is concerned about reputation, but you really explained it perfectly, where it took you some time, but with every step of the way, you became more powerful. And now you're in this place where I love it. You're out of the woo-woo closet and you're really standing in your own integrity, and you're teaching other people about it, which I think is always the purpose, really, of being a healer, is healing yourself so that you can heal others, help heal others.
Exactly. From your own experience, are there any question or is there two important questions that people didn't ask relating to astrology and love that you would like to answer?
I would say that love is just such a sensitive subject for everybody, because we all want it so badly, and not all of us can find it in the ways that we think we need it. And always the invitation with astrology is, the offering of the understanding, and then it becomes on us to change ourselves, to change the way we see things, to step into, like you said, to step into your power, out of your insecurities. Because I just don't ever remember being taught much about love. And I don't know about you. I feel like I had to learn it on my own. But with astrology, you can sort of get the outline. You still have to write the paper on how you're going to do love, but at least you get the notes, the cliff notes.
That's great. That's a great way to put it. We are really big on self-love in my community and in my coaching. And I love asking my guests for her own definition of self-love, because a lot of women don't even know where to start. What is your definition of self-love?
Oh, that's such a good question. My definition of self-love is around knowing myself. Yeah. And developing and cultivating a very deep understanding of who I am and what I need in order to thrive. And I think that it's important, so many of us are taught that kind of thing is selfish, or that we really need to put other people's needs in front of ours. We're very conditioned, that's what we were taught with being children, is that our needs were not the most important. But I truly believe that when we know and understand ourselves and we are being kind and compassionate and even just aware, even just witnessing our own ways of being in the world, that it's so relaxing to our nervous systems. And we need that. We need, we're out in the world is a stressful place. We can't get away from it. But if we can relax our own nervous systems by simply just being with ourselves, what's happening with me right now, it's a wonderful form of self-care for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I know you have a freebie for our audience. Could you give us a little bit of information about what it is?
Yeah, definitely. So I mentioned in the beginning about a moon sign, and we all have a moon sign. It's it talks about our relationship to our emotions. It also talks about the way that we self-care, the way that we mother ourselves, because the moon is one of the mother planets. And it also can tell us about what our experience was like with our own mother. And the moon is just such a rich archetype, especially for women. And so this is a moon sign video that just gives you a little bit of, more in-depth information about what the moon sign means. It gives you instructions for finding your own moon sign. And then I go into it, a little bit of each sign, moon in Aries, moon in Gemini, and what that means. And also, what it means for us emotionally, but also what it means in terms of our experience being mothered. And
wow.
You can it's a free video. You can just download it. There's actually
and I'll send the link. If you want that freebie, you can just comment with the words "more stars," and you will receive the link automatically. So you'll have access to it.
Yeah, and you can listen to it. You can listen to it while you're walking, like you would a podcast, or you can watch it. There's visuals that go with it, but either way, I think it's a great intro into, learning something specific about you from astrology that's not your sun sign.
Yes. And if people want to get in contact with you to ask questions or request a reading, or where should they go?
So you can find me at my website, which is nathacampanella.com. And you spell my name Natha.
Yeah.
Campanella is, pretty obvious.
I'll put in the comments too, in the description of the video, so that they can access.
Perfect. And I'm on Instagram every day. I'm on Facebook, Natha Campanella Astrology. And I would love to hear from you. I am very interactive. So, I often post, things that are going on in astrology. And I always ask for comments, and I talk to people a lot. So, come find me.
Great. I really want to thank you for being part of this podcast today. That was a pleasure. I learned a lot because, as you know, I told you I was pretty ignorant. I am still ignorant regarding astrology, but that somehow started to open the door and for me to understand it a little bit more and continue on my quest. So thank you for being part of this. And if there was one last word you wanted to leave the audience with, what would you tell them?
I would say that I know that this audience is one that is on a quest of self-awareness. And so I would say, get an astrology reading. And Murielle, we should set up a reading. I would love to do a chart reading for you.
Yeah.
But, it's another tool to really learning who we are and what we're doing. And I just think that is invaluable.
Definitely. So thank you. This concludes our episode today. And as I said, you can always submit questions. We are going to come back to answer later. Go check Natha's Facebook and website. And I'll see you next week with another episode of Date Like a French Woman. Have a wonderful week and go love yourself. Bye.
If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel. And for questions, information, or to book a free 30-minute introductory coaching session, please visit datelikeafrenchwoman.com.